Okay. Hi. Thank you for coming. I'm Jamie. I'm the product marketing manager at the events calendar. And today we're going to be talking about terms and privacy policy requirements for event websites. I'm joined today by the team from Termageddon, and they're going to discuss this important topic. So if you guys want to just introduce yourselves, go ahead.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for having us. We're very excited to talk about privacy policies and terms of service for events websites.
And I'd imagine everyone watching this couldn't be more excited to learn about privacy policies and terms and conditions. I'm sure every person spends all their time thinking about this type of stuff.
I know I do.
Well, you actually do.
But that is literally my job. Awesome. So we have a little presentation for everybody. So we'll share that right now.
All right, Jimmy, can you see our screen okay?
Yep, you're good.
Awesome.
Yeah, so terms and privacy policy requirements for event-based websites. Before we start, we did want to note that anything that we talk about today is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be legal advice. If you are looking for legal advice, we would recommend consulting with an attorney in your area.
And at the end of this presentation, we share with you some common ways and popular ways you can reach out and contact attorneys asking about this stuff.
So a couple of things that we'll talk about today. So we'll talk about Hans and I and who we are and why we're here talking to you. We'll talk about what is personally identifiable information, what is a privacy policy and why you need to have one. And we'll also talk about some other policies like a terms of service and a disclaimer and how they can help you. We'll talk about where to get policies and then also a special offer.
Yep. And then I think we're going to end this with a little Q&A, if that's okay with you, Jamie. And we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And just a reminder, when answering questions, please note we're not providing legal advice. We're just providing information.
Yep. So a little bit about me. My name is Donata, and I'm a privacy and technology attorney and a certified information privacy professional. I'm the president of Termageddon and the legal engineer behind the policy questionnaires and text, and I'm also responsible for keeping our clients' policies up to date with changing legislation. Outside of work, I'm the chair of the American Bar Association's e-privacy committee and the chair of the privacy and cybersecurity committee of the Chicago Bar.
My name's Hans. I'm the other co-founder of Termageddon. I oversee sales and marketing with Ricky. Ricky's on our team. He's on this call as well. Prior to Termageddon, I ran a 12-person web design and software development company in downtown Chicago. I sold that business to go full-time Termageddon, and I oversee agency partnerships and just general education we provide to as many people as possible.
Yeah, and if you can't tell from the last names, we are married.
Yes, we are.
Another fun fact.
2 years and counting. Let's go.
Yep. All right. So we don't have many definitions here, which is very sad for me as a lawyer, but probably very good for you. But the only definition that we do have in here is personally identifiable information, or PII. So what is PII? PII is any data that could identify someone. So examples of PII would include names, emails, phone numbers, physical addresses, and IP addresses. So maybe Hans can talk to us a little bit of how do event-based websites collect PII?
Yeah. So, I feel like any modern website in today's day and age collects things like names, emails, and IP addresses. But I always like to have it make sense to me. When am I collecting PII with my event-based website? So we wrote up some examples here of common examples where personal information is being collected. Event registration forms, when someone has to submit their name, their email, maybe their phone number to register for an event, that would be the moment in time the website owner is collecting that person's personal information. When accepting payments, when selling tickets through the website, that could be another good example. Community submissions, when people submit an event to an events-based website, they may be submitting their location, their information, their contact information, event newsletter subscription forms for upcoming events and promotions. When sending an email, when subscribing people to a newsletter, you're not only collecting their email, chances are you're probably sharing it with an email service provider or email marketing provider like HubSpot, Constant Contact, there's always that other famous one,
MailChimp.
MailChimp. There it is. Active Campaign. HubSpot's more of a CRM, but anyways, speaker submission forms. This is common if you are asking for like speakers to submit their information. They would then be submitting their personal information, I would assume. An event recap email newsletters. This is similar in nature to event newsletter subscription forms, where things like email address will be collected to provide services or marketing newsletters.
Yeah, and collecting PII isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? So I would guess that event-based websites can't even really run without collecting PII, because you can't like promote those events. You can't create new events, things like that. So it's very common to collect PII, but there are certain rules that you need to follow when doing so, which we'll talk about shortly.
Yep. But first, we just want to show some screenshots of these examples of where personal information is collected. So, on the left side, we have ticket payments. People are clearly putting in their name, payment information, stuff like that. Subscriber lists, having people submit their data. For the record, this screenshot was taken from theeventscalendar.com. And then attendee details. So, this is the screen where it is manually being submitted by the admin, but attendees can also have areas where they submit their information. So as Donata said, very common. It's not a bad thing that a website collects personal information. In fact, I would imagine most event-based websites are also probably sharing that data with third parties. So sharing data, unlike selling data, is a very common practice. A lot of companies say, well, I don't share any of the data I collect through my website, but we tend to find that tends to not be the case. So sharing PII, otherwise known as sharing personally identifiable information, means sending it or providing it to a third party. And it's not the same as selling. And I think it's important to just kind of give some examples here. When sending a newsletter or an upcoming event notification, I assume you may be using a third-party email marketing software. I just mentioned Active Campaign, Constant Contact. Those are good examples of third-party email marketing services that you're utilizing to provide your audience with relevant newsletters. Sharing your registration data with third-party event hosts and organizers. We see this being very common for multiple reasons, but it's a very good example of when a company, website owner may be sharing data with a third party. And last but not least, processing payments via a third-party gateway, Stripe, PayPal, Eventbrite. When embedded into your website and structured a certain way, you would be technically sharing that data with those processors who typically anonymize it and then process.
Yeah, and just to give a kind of further explanation of this. So let's say you have MailChimp as your email marketing provider. So when you sign somebody up for an email newsletter, you go in and you type in John Doe, john@johndoe.com or something like that, right? And that information sits on MailChimp servers. So that means that it's been shared with them. So even if you, for example, delete your MailChimp account or something like that, they might still have that information unless you ask them to delete it or they delete it on their own. So that's what it means. That's what sharing means.
Also, another good example, I should have added this to the list, but when someone registers for an event and it's stored in the back end of the WordPress website, and if you have like a contract web designer who can log into the back end of your website and technically see that data, that would be a good example of sharing data with parties that need to operate the website. So
yeah, and sharing data, again, nothing weird about it.
Nope.
Businesses do it all the time. There's just a certain set of rules that you need to follow when you do it.
That's exactly right.
So really the most important part of today's presentation probably is that any website that collects PII needs to have a privacy policy. So note here that we said collect, not share, not sell, not even use. Privacy policy is needed as soon as that information is being collected.
Yep. And that's just because I'm going to go back one slide real quick. That's just because PII, personally identifiable information, is regulated under a series of privacy laws that protect the data of people. And those regulations are what require you to have a privacy policy.
Yeah, so what is a privacy policy? You've probably seen this on most websites that you've ever been to. At the bottom on the footer, you'll see a page that says privacy policy. So the purpose of a privacy policy is to explain your privacy practices, such as what PII you're collecting, what you do with that PII, who you share it with, and more. So you may be asking yourself, what should a privacy policy include? So to a non-lawyer, or not a privacy lawyer, the disclosures in a privacy policy can seem pretty random, right? You might think you can just throw anything in there, and as long as you explain what you're collecting, what you do with it, and who you share it with, you're good to go. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So to first determine what needs to be in your privacy policy, you need to figure out what privacy laws apply to you. And that is because privacy policies are dictated by those laws. So each law literally has a section in it that says businesses that need to comply with this law need to have a privacy policy, and here's what it needs to say. And it's just literally an itemized list. So to determine what privacy laws apply to you, you should be asking yourself, whose PII are you collecting through your website? So who can access the website and submit a contact form, or be tracked with Google Analytics, or submit an event registration form? Where are your customers located? So if your events are virtual, that's going to be a little bit more difficult to figure out than if they are only in a particular town. To whom do you offer goods or services? So who can attend those events? Where do you do business, and who do you track online through services such as analytics? So there's a number of different privacy laws that are in place across the United States, in the UK, EU, Canada, and
beyond.
Australia and beyond. I'm not going to go through each of these one by one because that would probably bore everyone here to death.
Yeah, everyone will leave this live chat.
Yeah, but not the first time that has ever happened.
We have a guest. We have a guest coming. This is our cat. Sorry,
hi,
she's
Dora.
been a
She's
little bit
looking
needy.
for a place to sleep.
Yeah.
Is what she's doing. But what's the most important to remember here is that privacy laws are created to protect consumers and not businesses. And because of the broad-ranging nature of the internet, so like anyone from anywhere could submit a form, these laws can apply to businesses outside of the state or country in which those laws are passed. So a great example here is one of California's privacy laws, California Online Privacy and Protection Act. So that applies to anyone that collects the PII of residents of California. So if somebody from California could go onto your website and submit their name and email, that privacy law will probably apply to you. Or Nevada Revised Statutes Chapter 603A, that will apply to anyone doing business in Nevada. So if you have customers there or you have events there, that law can apply to you. One thing that you'll see on this chart is that there's a couple laws marked as 2023. That means that they're going into effect in 2023. And as technology changes and impacts the privacy of consumers, we're expecting to see more and more of these privacy laws that protect consumer data. And one reason why you're seeing so many states pass so many privacy laws is because in the United States, we don't have a federal privacy law unless you're talking about children's data, financial data, or health data. So each state has taken it upon themselves to pass their own privacy laws.
And real quick, I just want to just give everyone a summary. Donata just said it, but I just want to reiterate, privacy laws are what regulate the collection of personally identifiable information. And it's the privacy laws that will dictate what your privacy policy needs to say. And the critical thing to understand is that privacy laws protect people. They don't care where your business is located. So regardless of where you're located, if you're collecting people's data from certain areas, as listed here, you may need to comply with these privacy laws and make very specific disclosures in your privacy policy required under each and every applicable privacy law.
Yep. So what happens for non-compliance? So fines can range from $2,500 per website visitor to 20 million euros or more in total, depending on whose privacy rights were violated. So again, taking the California example, let's say there's 100 people from California.
CCPA.
Calopa.
Oh, it's Calopa? Sorry.
Yeah. Who visited your website and they were tracked with Google Analytics. So Google Analytics collected their IP address. So that fine would be calculated as 2,500 times 100 because it's per website visitor whose privacy rights you violated, meaning that, fines can add up very, very quickly. And updates to your privacy policy. So this actually used to be a really, really nice grid. And you can still find the grid, termageddon.com, on our blog, privacy bill tracker. But because we don't have a federal privacy law in the US, we have all of these states proposing and passing their own privacy bills. So these are the ones that we're tracking right now that are being considered for passing. A couple things. So all of these would still apply to businesses outside of the state in which they are passed. So like, let's say you're not in Vermont, or you're somewhere else, you would still need to worry about this potentially. All of them would require websites to have privacy policies that make very specific disclosures. All of them would provide certain privacy rights to consumers, such as the right to delete information or to opt out of direct marketing. And then lastly, some of these would allow consumers to sue businesses directly for privacy law violations, which is where we could see a lot of litigation in the future.
That's right. Yeah, I think New York has all three of their bills are proposing private right of action, meaning if any of those bills get passed, any New Yorker will be able to sue any website owner located anywhere just for having a contact form on their website without proper New York privacy law disclosures. So
Yep.
It's going to be interesting couple of years. And I think that's what takes us to kind of a concluding thought that I think a lot of website owners don't realize, which is that you not only have to have a privacy policy that provides the disclosures you're currently required by law to make, but you also need to develop a strategy to keeping your privacy policy up to date when things change. Donata shared the fact that in 2023, 6 new laws are going into effect. These are going to require changes potentially to any applicable business. So yeah, develop a strategy to keep your privacy policy up to date. And that's just the future. I mean, that's just what happens when things start getting regulated in our web design space.
So privacy policy disclosures, again, those depend on the privacy laws that apply to you. So here we have this list of disclosures, and I think we can make the slides available afterwards.
We will.
Whether or not you need all of these or some of these will just depend on the privacy laws that apply to you. So there's a lot of policies that have, a quarter of this, and there's a lot that have all of them. It just depends on the privacy laws that apply to them, which I think takes me into a very commonly asked question that we get a lot is, hey, can't I just get a template? So the issue with that is that templates are not based on the privacy laws that apply to you. Maybe they'll cover one privacy law. So you can find like a GDPR compliant privacy policy. First of all, it's not going to be compliant. Trust me, I've checked so many of these that I've gone blue in the face, but they just don't have all the disclosures. But GDPR may not be the only privacy law that applies to you. So you're missing all of the other disclosures. And a lot of people will say, hey, well, if I get a GDPR compliant privacy policy, that's the most strict privacy law. So then I'm good on all of these. Well, no, because GDPR, for example, does not ask you to list how your website responds to do not track signals. And California's privacy law, CalOPA, does. So if you get a GDPR privacy policy, that's just one example of a disclosure that you're missing. And there's a lot more of those.
Quite a few more, yeah.
And then also, can't you just copy and paste the privacy policy of your competitor? Again, no, because you don't know what privacy laws apply to them. And if you don't know what privacy laws apply to you, there's no match there, right? So you can't have all of the disclosures that you need in their privacy policy because they might not be subject to the same laws, or they might be subject to more laws that you are not subject to. But now, because your privacy policy says that you're compliant with them, you are actually required to be compliant.
Oh, that's a big one.
Them.
Yeah, a lot of people push for CCPA compliance and they want to get all these additional disclosures. I'm like, you just signed yourself up for way more liability than you need. But
I mean, it's up to them.
It is.
But yeah, it's kind of nuts.
It is. It's wild.
But yeah, so these are the privacy policy disclosures that you may need to have.
And I think, with people wanting to do templates or copy and paste from another website, I think they're asking the question, how do I get a privacy policy as fast as possible? When in reality, a website owner should be asking themselves, how do I create a compliant privacy policy to minimize my risk of being fined or sued for non-compliance? And I think,
and how do I keep that policy up to date with changing legislation? What are you going to do? Check your competitor's website every day
week, refresh
to see if they hopefully followed what they were
Exactly.
supposed to do.
People used to be able to get by creating templates, privacy policy templates, and just kind of scrapping by, but that's just not where the world is going. People are getting more privacy rights, not less. There are more fines being issued, not less. So, I just think it's becomes just a matter of time until it's like every company's doing this. It's just whether do you want to be proactive and get it done or reactive in dealing with a problem and then get it done.
And
So
it's also like, how do you want to represent yourself as a business? Like, as part of my line of work, I look through a lot of websites, privacy policies. That's just what I do.
yeah.
And I found ones that are like, our company is ABC Corporation, suggested text. And like all throughout the entire document, it says suggested text. Well, like, what does that tell your customers about what kind of business you are if you can't even take, the time to remove suggested text from your policies? Like, it doesn't look good.
I agree. And what's the other one? We value your privacy highly. Like so many privacy policy templates start off with that. You value it highly, but you haven't provided the disclosures you're required by law to provide to them.
All right, so we're getting too far. This is becoming a podcast at this
Yeah,
point.
right.
But I will tell you the secret behind we value your privacy highly. And every single lawyer that I know does it because we have no idea what to say in the first sentence without it becoming like weird. It's just like we don't know what to say there. So we value your privacy highly, and that has circulated throughout the entire world, and it's now a thing, and that's how everybody does it.
Well, I could keep going. Like the fact that it's actually a privacy notice, not a privacy policy. But we're gonna move on. We got more policies to cover.
We're not long enough in our marriage to have this.
All right, so
now that we have the privacy policy, Hans told us about terms of service.
Yes. So a terms of service, actually, let's just clear the air first. So many people get confused between like, what is the terms and conditions versus terms of use versus terms statement versus terms of service. So these are actually all interchangeable words. And really what all of these are intended to do is the same thing, which is to reduce your liability as a business owner by stating the rules to using your website. So a terms of service can help you answer commonly asked questions by customers and moving them along the purchasing path.
So I can give a quick example of that.
Yeah.
As a consumer myself, I buy stuff online. And whenever I'm buying certain items like shoes, I always check their refund policy and if they have one and what it is, because I know that the likelihood of that item not fitting me correctly is high. So I want to know, hey, am I going to be able to get a refund and what that looks like, or like get an exchange? And if I don't see anything on the website, on the terms of service about like refunds, I go to another company. Because what am I going to do as a consumer? Like, I'm not going to call them or email them and wait like 3 days for them to respond. No, I'm just going to go to somebody who makes it clear.
Well, yeah. And like an event-based website, you'll book you may want to be like, okay, this event, it's a physical event. It's 2 months from now. What if I have something come up? Can I cancel prior to the event?
Yeah. Or like
what does
if
the
it's
refund
raining,
policy look like?
Am I going to get a refund?
That's a great example. Like,
or like, if the performers don't come because they're sick, are you going to cancel and issue refunds to customers, or are they kind of on their own?
Yeah.
Things like that are very, very important.
So other examples are further lessen your liability by spelling out what warranty, if any, you offer on your events. Protecting your intellectual property. This is what's called a DMCA notice, otherwise known as the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which more or less are statements saying, hey, if anyone's posted anything that's copyright infringement, using imagery illegally or content, that's not their right to issue, rather than suing us, the website owner, just let us know and we'll remove it from the website.
I think this comes really in handy for event websites that allow attendees to post pictures of the event. So let's say they took a picture of the event and they uploaded it onto your website saying, oh my gosh, what a fun event. Definitely will go again. But that image turns out to be copyrighted. You can be protected then.
Yep. Saving costs by specifying where you want to resolve disputes. So this one little sentence can save so much money if there were to be an issue, stating, I want to resolve disputes in Cook County, Illinois, where I'm located. By stating that helps bring people to your turf rather than you having to go to theirs if there were to be a dispute with regard to your website. lessen the amount of damages that you may be responsible for in a case of a dispute, and maintain control over your website and events. So really, it's just to clear the air between you and your prospective buyers of your events, and just to make sure everyone understands, are we all on the same page with what we have to offer.
Yeah. So, what is the terms of service disclosed? What does it include? So, there's a couple things that you would want to make sure that you include. So, let's say you're selling event tickets internationally. So, right now you're located in Chicago, but you're doing an event in Australia. So, because it's an international sale of goods, the UN Convention on Contracts for the Sale of Goods, the Uniform Commercial Code, and Incoterms would apply to that transaction by default, unless you are explicitly saying that they do not apply. And those terms are not very favorable to businesses. So, for example, you may be required to offer refunds or can't charge a cancellation fee. So disclaiming them explicitly is good for a business. Complying with applicable consumer protection laws. So if you're selling event tickets in the UK or in Australia, there are consumer protection laws that apply to transactions between a trader and a consumer. So you would want to make sure that you're in compliance with those, because otherwise your terms of service will not be enforceable. And then comply with automated renewal laws. So if you're offering subscriptions, so let's say something like $10 a month and you get 2 tickets to 2 events in the city or something like that, there are automated renewal laws if you're dealing with consumers in California. So those require certain disclosures to be made in your terms of service as well. And if you don't provide these disclosures to the consumer, that automated subscription and anything that they get from it is actually considered a gift to the consumer.
Yeah. And then, on the left-hand side, there's just a bunch of other parts that can make up a terms of service just to help further limit the liability of a website owner. The one I want to just bring out real quick is kind of in the middle, limitation of liability for links to other websites. Yet again, another single sentence disclosure that basically states, something along the lines of, hey, we offer links to third-party sites. Because we don't control those websites, we're not responsible if you click on one of those links and that site gets hacked and you get hacked, you can't come back and sue us. Where does this relate to event-based websites? If you're sending people to another website to finish a transaction like Eventbrite or something like that, you want to make it clear that they understand it's not your website that can control that website. So therefore you waive your liability.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Let's go to the next page. All right. So we just finished the terms of service.
Yep. And then we have the disclaimer. So a disclaimer is generally a document that helps limit the liabilities that a website owner may be responsible for. Great examples of disclaimers are those exercise videos that you put in your VHS and in the 90s to do your jazzercise that would say, this is not related to any person in particular. Now that I stare at you.
I don't jazzercise.
But your mom did.
Yeah, she did. I guess she did.
So, those have the disclaimer at the beginning, like if you're not feeling well, stop your jazzercise. That's an example of a disclaimer. Another example is the one that we said at the very beginning of this talk, was that nothing here is legal advice. So for event-based websites, there's a couple ways that a disclaimer can help you. So if you're advertising third-party products or services, they will help protect you if somebody purchases those products or services and is somehow injured by them. If you have health products on there, they'll help protect you in case they don't perform or deliver the expected results. If you're displaying the affiliate links, usually the affiliate terms of service require you to have a disclaimer that says that you're part of an affiliate program. And it will just help retain the trust of people who listen to you. If you list health or fitness advice, disclaimer will help protect you if somebody gets injured by that. And then lastly, the not legal advice disclaimer. So now that we kind of touched on all the policies, we talked about the privacy policy, the terms of service, and the disclaimer. Maybe Hans can tell us how somebody can obtain website policies.
Yeah, absolutely. So Donata kind of hit on the fact on why we have some concerns about the templates that we've come across, at least over the years. And the fact that even if you've somehow found a template that provides the exact disclosures you're required to make under the laws that apply to you, how do you keep that template up to date over time? So we really don't find templates nor copying competitor websites to be a future strategy, a future proofing strategy. Instead, we are presenting 2 options here that we think are your best options. Option 1 would which is without a doubt the best option, is to hire a privacy attorney and a contracts attorney. Nothing beats having your attorney draft and continually update your policies when the laws change, because they can provide you with legal advice. That's fantastic. They can give you insights into everything with regard to what disclosures you need to make and so forth. The con, obviously, to hiring a privacy and contracts attorney to draft this stuff is, it can be $5,000 a year or more. We've had customers that have been quoted $50,000 up front and then 10 grand a year. So, it can get very expensive. And that leads me into just some pieces of advice. If you do have the budget to hire an attorney to draft this stuff, I'd recommend checking out the website IAPP.org. It stands for the International Association of Privacy Professionals, IAPP.org. And there you'll find a list of tons of privacy attorneys that are also certified information privacy professionals that can help you draft your policies. And one of the first questions I like to ask an attorney prior to asking them to draft my privacy policy is, what is your process to drafting a privacy policy? And one of the first things you want to hear from them is the fact that they say, well, we first figure out what privacy laws apply to you, because only then can you find out the disclosures you're required to make. If you're talking with your attorney and they're not recommending that, maybe it might be a good idea to consider talking with other attorneys who may be recommending that at least.
Yeah, who have more experience. You definitely want to ask them what the cost is up front, and what the charge is for monitoring the legislation, making updates to your policies for you. And then also asking how they keep up to date with changing legislation as well.
Absolutely. Okay. So, not everyone has, 5-10K a year laying around just to keep their website policies up to date. And that leads us into our second option, which are website policy generators. So unlike a template where you just have to fill out things like down the line, like kind of filling in paragraph blanks and stuff like that, a website policies generator, a good one, will help you identify the laws you need to make disclosures for, and will ask you the questions specifically related to those privacy laws to make those disclosures that you're required to make. A typical website policies generator will cost about $99 a year, and it typically fits most small business models. If you're collecting protected health information or approving people for loans based off their credit score, which I doubt any event-based website's doing, but if you are, that would be a good example of only having option one to hire a privacy attorney. But website policy generators just in general typically can handle event-based websites pretty easily. Now, the cons to a website policy generator is that they're not legal service providers. So that's kind of the consequence to basically saving a lot of money every year, is that you have to understand that these are technology providers. When you agree to their policies and terms and stuff, you're acknowledging that you understand that fact. So if you are considering the route of going the privacy or the website policies generator route, I highly recommend researching who is behind the company. Are they attorney founded? If they're not attorney founded, what's their strategy to keep up to date when privacy laws change? Are they constantly communicating about privacy bills and privacy laws and changes through their blogs and social media channels? Yeah, so I would say that would be a really good qualifier to consider. Who's behind the company, and what, are they communicating all the changes that are coming up in the very near future? For those of you who are interested, we have two deals here. One is for event calendar customers, and then we have another one for web designers. So if you're a web designer listening to this, sit back, you can wait till the next slide. But if you are a event website owner, Jamie and us put together a little promotion here where if you use the promo code TEC for the events calendar, TEC at checkout, you will receive obviously the full set of policies from Termageddon, which includes a privacy policy, terms, disclaimer, cookie policy, cookie consent, and more. You'll receive 20% off your first payment for the annual program, which is only $99 a year. And Ricky's on the call, kind of maybe answering questions right now. I'm not sure because I can't see. But we also have an event website starter pack where Ricky and I went through just a sample event website and went through the policy generation process. And when you use that promo code TEC at checkout, you'll get an event website starter pack license, as well as the walkthrough video Ricky and I did, just kind of showing what a typical event-based website does when generating their policies. So yeah, to get that deal, actually, technically, all you have to do is use the promo code TEC at checkout. But we created a little landing page for you, Termageddon.com/TEC. And that'll bring you to a page just kind of providing more details and whatever. But the promo code's there as well. If you are a web designer building out websites for clients, that's my background. I always jokingly say I had to marry a privacy attorney to figure this stuff out.
I mean, it's not a joke, you did.
Yeah, but I say it in a joking manner. But the reality is, I'd imagine you've probably gotten the question before from a client, what should I do for website policy? And as a web designer, I was like, I have no idea. I'm not your attorney. Like, what do you want me to do? And then they ask you to go copy and paste one from a website somewhere, and it's just a super sketchy feeling. So if you're tired of that sketchy feeling, I'd recommend obviously telling them to check out, to contact their attorney. But if they don't have an attorney or don't want to contact their attorney for website policies, to consider a generator. And if you're a web designer, I would love for you to check out our agency partner program. So we basically give you, the web agency owner, a free license of Termageddon just so you can try us out, take the time to figure out how our tool works, generate your own policies for your business. And that way you're presenting yourself, professionally, moving forward to any prospect that visits your website. And for with the special we have here, Termageddon.com/the events calendar, you can apply to be an agency partner, and we'll actually give you 2 free licenses for Termageddon. So you can use one for your own website, and then you can resell the other to one of your favorite clients, or just give it away for free to a client, something like that. But we do this in the hopes that you like our product enough to want to recommend Termageddon as a potential solution to your clients. And we provide lots of copy and content that you can use to share with your clients to educate them on website policies and why they're important. So if you're a regular customer, it's Termageddon.com/TEC. If you're a web designer and want to apply to our agency partner program, no credit card required. You just have to provide your website design details. Termageddon.com/the events calendar. Okay, that closes things up.
Yeah, so I think we can go into questions, but we have our emails here too. So if you have any questions, feel free to send us an email as well.
Awesome. I'm going to stop sharing here. Hey, you both are still in the call. Excellent.
We're
Yeah.
here.
Oh, and we will send out an email tomorrow with all of the deals, so that if anyone
that's
didn't write
awesome.
it
Thank
down,
you.
so everything will be there along with a replay of the webinar.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are we doing a Q&A? I
so-
couldn't remember, right?
Yeah, we could do a Q&A.
Awesome.
So if anyone has any questions, feel free to just put them in the chat, and I'll read them out loud.
For
We
the
do
record,
have-
sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, for the record, it's typically right at this moment, we won't get any questions. And then some brave soul will ask a question, and then everyone unloads and asks all their questions. So please be that brave soul. Ask anything you want. Hopefully we can be helpful.
We did get one question earlier where someone asked, what would the strategy be? I think this is related to the privacy policy disclaimer. And it says, how would you keep up? Is there one site that we can go to learn all the changes?
Yeah. So later on in the presentation, I covered 2 ways to work to get your policies: privacy attorney or a website policies generator. Both of these groups, a good privacy attorney will notify you of changing legislation, and your attorney will be able to provide you not only that, but also legal advice. There's also generators. Obviously, I'm a little biased, but Termageddon, I kind of like a lot. And companies like Termageddon will monitor these privacy laws, notify you of changes, and let you know when updates are being automatically made to your website policies, or if any new questions need to be answered prior to pushing automatic updates.
Yeah, and if you're curious as to how that gets done, there is no one website because legislation comes from different countries. So you can't just have one website for that. It comes from a variety of different sources. So LexisNexis StateNet, which is basically like Google Alerts for lawyers. So you input the name of the law or the things that you're searching for. So for example, one of my search terms is privacy policy. So anytime there's any legislation introduced with the word privacy policy, I get an email and then a link to that legislation. American Bar Association, e-privacy committee, great place to learn. the International Association of Privacy Professionals,
That's a
their
big
whole
one.
network. I'm part of a list. I always get those emails, as well as my local bar association, which is the Chicago Bar. So like comes from a whole bunch of different sources.
Yep. And yeah, I guess like maybe
Don't do it. It's a terrible process.
You know, after hearing all that, you may want to
I have
consider
gray hair now.
you may want to consider those routes of, you know, speaking with your attorney and asking them to keep up to date with those privacy changes, or considering working with a generator where their job is to keep up to date with that stuff.
Yep.
Awesome.
And now do we head into the abyss with no other follow-up
No,
questions?
we have more.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Okay. If we do the 1-year subscription, you will automatically know the laws of the state we're in and what to put in the privacy policy and terms, etc.
No. So we don't automatically know anything about you. We're not Mark Zuckerberg. So what we do is we ask you a series of questions. So when you sign up, the software will ask you some questions. So the first set of questions will help the software determine what privacy laws apply to you, and therefore what disclosures your privacy policy needs to contain. Same thing with the terms of service. And then the remainder of the questions are based around those disclosures that you're required to make. So that's how we know. And if any state passes new privacy laws, we might have to ask you some additional qualifying questions, which we'll send you over email to figure out if those laws apply to you, if we can't figure out from how you answer the questionnaire.
The lovely Attorney General of California loves to make final changes even after all changes were made. So every now and then we do have to ask additional questions, but I want to just reiterate to everyone, privacy laws don't care about where your website's located. What they care about is protecting their people's data. So if your website collects people's data, regardless of where you're located, if you're collecting data from California, you need to find out if California's privacy laws apply to you.
Even if you're not in California.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I just kind of got or maybe the perception that maybe this individual thinks that it's the laws of the state where they're located in, which is, again, that's not necessarily true. It could be different countries where the privacy laws apply to you. But good question, though, nonetheless. Appreciate it.
Okay. Any suggestions about government sites and agencies?
Yeah, so if you're a government website, the first thing that I would do is talk to somebody in your compliance department and ask them what their plan is. And if they don't have a plan, I would recommend reaching out to your state's attorney general if you're a state government site, or your federal government contact to figure out what to do. Usually they will have policies that are written. Your agency might just need to request it because they forgot that you don't have one. And usually they'll have them written up already for you, or they will write it up for you. So the best source, if you're in the government, is to ask somebody who's higher up, just so as to not waste taxpayer dollars. As a taxpayer myself, usually the government takes care of its own sites.
And obviously, because every country has their own government websites for disclosing privacy laws, there's different websites for every single.
And also different laws
agency
that apply to the government that don't apply
That's
to
true,
private
too.
entities
Yep.
as well, like FOIA.
Does term again offer include terms and conditions in addition to a privacy policy?
Yep. A term again license includes a set of policies and lets you choose however many you need for your website. So that includes a privacy policy, terms and conditions, cookie policy, cookie consent solution, disclaimer, and end user license agreement.
And is your company only for US-based customers?
Nope. We service businesses or nonprofits or just general website owners located in the US, Canada, UK, Ireland, and Australia currently. And so, yes, we do cover Canada, including Quebec Bill 64, which goes into effect next year.
We don't cover it right now.
Oh, true. Yeah, because it's not in effect.
But
yeah,
we
but
will cover it
we're monitoring
prior to
it.
going into effect.
And fun fact for Tiffany, who made the comment, Donata's actually friends with Michael Powers, one of the co-authors of Pipetta.
That poor man. He wishes I would have never brought up his name in front of you.
He was cool. He offered to take us on his boat.
He's a cool guy. He did offer to smuggle me into Canada,
Yes.
which I liked. But yeah.
Nice. Okay. I have been looking for a business like yours. I'm an individual website designer. I get most of my business through referrals from current customers. Can I still sign up as an agency partner?
Yep, that's awesome, and I'm really happy to hear that. You know, I was a former web design owner. I felt so helpless when clients like basically demanded that I somehow know what privacy policy they need. So yes, absolutely, you can apply. In fact, if you see Ricky right now, Ricky will be the one vetting you. So be sure to be nice to Ricky because he gets to say the yes or no. He's like the gladiator person, like goes up.
Oh yeah, a lot of thumbs up though. It's very rare the thumb goes down.
So just make sure you can provide proof that you provide web design services to people. We're just trying to help out web designers just because of the troubles I went through as a web designer. So
All your trouble.
all my trouble, all my hair loss. So
I think that's it for questions.
Awesome.
Nice.
So yeah, thank you guys so much. This was super informative.
cool.
Awesome.
I'm really
Thank
happy
you.
to hear
Appreciate
that.
Yeah,
it.
thank you for
Yeah.
having us. This is
Yeah,
fun.
of course.
Awesome. If I could give some final parting words, if that's all right. It is okay that data is being regulated. In fact, I would argue that's a pretty awesome thing that people are getting their privacy rights. It's just the fact that as website owners, we just need to be aware of the fact that we may be collecting data from people from all over. So it turns out you just need to respect people's privacy rather than trying to hide from it. You know, I'd recommend trying to embrace it. It shockingly gets easy once you do. So
Yeah, and if I can give any parting words, I guess now that I kind of have to, is when posting the privacy policy on the website in the footer, make sure it's not combined with the terms of service. So just
That's a good
have
one.
a privacy policy on its own and make sure that it's easily visible.
and to
Yeah, well,
end it with another set of parting words. I'm just kidding. We're done.
okay. So as I said, you'll get an email tomorrow with webinar replay, helpful resources, everything you need. So you don't have to remember anything. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so
for
much,
having
Jamie.
us.
Really appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.